Here we go. Hello, everyone. Hello, happy Monday. Welcome to this Supervisors in Government Community of Practice virtual networking event. We're talking about dealing with distractions today. Welcome in, everybody. We'll give everyone a minute or two to join us and get settled. In the meantime, please feel free to participate in our icebreaker in the chat. With Memorial Day weekend coming up, I'm thinking about food already. So I'm curious what everyone's go-to side is when you're going to a backyard barbecue, a party, those summer parties, chips and okay, here we go. We're off to the races here. I was gonna say pasta salad, so I see Kalina, thank you. Oh my gosh, well, look at this. I can't keep up with the chat. Stuffed jalapeno poppers. Oh my gosh, everybody is on the same wavelength today. This is amazing. Lots of chips and dip. Mindy, what's your go-to here for?
Oh, I want some recipes. I've seen all this go by. I don't know. I went camping and we had a potluck on Friday last weekend. So we just brought like a broccoli pear salad that was kind of yummy. Yeah.
That's nutrient dense
Yeah.
salad are
Yeah.
the way to go. I love that. I see frog eye salad in here.
What is that?
I don't know. Janae, if you can enlighten us, please let me know. Banana pudding, corn dip. Oh my gosh. I do. Maybe our next community of practice is really a recipe swap because,
Oh, elote salad. That's yummy.
yeah, that is a good one. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing. I'm going to scroll back through these to get some inspiration for this weekend. Um, but yes, welcome in again. You are in the Supervisors in Government Community of Practice virtual networking discussion for today. We're so happy to have you here. If you're new to this event, new to this group, thanks for taking the time to join us. We're thrilled that you're spending time with us. This is a group for supervisors or folks who want to move into supervisory or management roles in government to come together, learn about a specific topic with a featured speaker, and learn from each other. So we encourage you to connect and comment and put questions in the chat, but also introduce yourselves to each other and connect on LinkedIn. This is a group for everyone to be together. Oh my gosh, the chat is still going off here. I love it. So today joining us, we have Mindy Covington here with us. We're so excited for you to join us, Mindy. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, we don't have a ton of time, so I'll get straight to it. But just a reminder for everyone in the chat, keep doing what you're doing. We do want to see your comments and questions. So while and I are talking, feel free to put comments and questions in the chat. All right, we'll get started here. We usually start kind of broadly. Let's get a lay of the land for the topic at hand here. So let's talk about time management broadly. Um, how has the topic changed in the last few things? How have things evolved in your perspective now that we're so online, chronically online, I think is the phrase. We're always in touch and we're always being pinged. So how do you view time management in the context of all of those things?
Yeah, I don't think this is big news, but the concept of time management has really undergone sort of a radical transformation in the era of constant connectivity. And you all know that we live that every day. And so, really, it's transformed into this always on paradigm with a complex dance between that of digital presence, managing your focus, and really having some intentional disconnection, which I think we all find hard to do a lot of times. So that expectation of immediate response has really become a cultural norm, creating a continuous cognitive overload, really, for all of us. That always on culture has found really profound psychological implications. And there's really three big areas that's true. One is fragmented attention. So that
Mm-hmm.
continuous ping and notifications, they really fractures our focus, making deep work increasingly challenging. And what used to be uninterrupted sort of hours of productivity are now a series of micro interactions and context switches that we're having to make really rapidly. The other part and aspect of that, I think, is decision fatigue.
Mhm.
with all that constant stream of information and potential interactions with individuals, they really face an unprecedented number of like micro decisions every day. Each notification or message requires a mental judgment, depending, it really just starts depleting our cognitive resources, which are limited. We don't think of it that way, but it is. And that can lead to stress and burnout.
Yeah, that burnout was our topic of discussion just last month. So this is almost like a carryover of themes here, but it all
Um,
rolls together. One impacts the other. But
Absolutely.
touching on decision fatigue, that's that's validating because sometimes we don't know. It's like, I'm doing my job, but why am I so tired? And it's the decision fatigue is really coming into it.
Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
sharing that too. Um, so yeah, the topic today is dealing with distractions and talking about time management approaches. So we can kind of move into that a little bit more specifically. So when we're talking about, maybe finding something that works for us in terms of time management, how should we go about figuring that out? What are the elements that we should consider that might work or maybe not work for us?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think finding that right time management approach is really highly personal. Personal. So, like, what works for you may not work for me or someone else. So you have to kind of choose how you what is that menu you can choose from to manage it and figure out how what fits for you. So some of the emerging time management strategies are things like digital minimalism,
Hmm.
intentionally reducing the digital notifications, creating really strict boundaries for any kind of technology engagement that you have. Another is intentional disconnection.
Hmm.
I was sharing with you that I went camping last weekend. I was up in the mountains in Maryland. I didn't have any cell service, and it was a little disconcerting, but at the same time, at a certain point, it just felt like a relief. But scheduling those periods of being offline is really important, maybe throughout your workday, and treating digital silence as a productivity and a mental health strategy as well. Another big one, and this is what I work with my clients with a lot, is attention management and really shifting your focus from time management to managing where your attention is directed. And this is something that I think is really crucial in giving us a sense of autonomy and self direction in our day. And it's a skill that can be learned as well. The other thing is finding ways to have asynchronous communication. So things like prioritizing methods that don't require an immediate response. I am just finishing up my 23-year career at the State Department, as well as USAID. But in my signature, it says, these are my hours, but they may not be your hours, particularly since I work with a global audience, right? So, I'm not expecting people to respond at 11 p.m., in Bangkok or something, just because I messaged them, late at night. So I think being able to allow a little bit of flexibility with that and being clear is really important. And it's also really good to let people know, I think, what the timeline is for a response, because some people need a little more time to process things. And when you give them some time before they respond, you might get some better interactions and information from, because not everyone has an answer right away. So the other thing is really thinking about how technology can help you. It's getting in the way with wanting our attention all the time, but there are some things with our advanced notification settings, using
Hmm.
focus mode sometimes on like smartphones and computers. But I really like the concept of time blocking, whether you do it yourself on your own calendar and actually put it there and have it clear that you're not available during that time, or there's a time system of blocking called Pomodoro. Uh,
Hmm.
I can put a link to that in here for
Yeah,
you all.
I'm familiar with that one. One,
Okay.
because I love Pomodoro sauce, and then two, it is a great method. I think it's been around for a while, but that one's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is because you know, I mean, it's just a website. You can easily just, click on it and then it tells you, to shut out everything else except for what you're working on. That idea, it's a time blocking method, right?
Right.
But I think really, Leah, the big fundamental change is philosophical in the sense that time management is no longer about squeezing maximum productivity into every moment, but
Hmm.
really curating one's attention and setting intentional boundaries and creating really meaningful engagement with work and personal life. Um, so
Yeah.
some of those key things are like selective connectivity,
Hmm.
choosing when and how to be available,
Hmm.
um, intentional presence, being really fully engaged in the current moment. I don't know how many, we like to be time travelers. We're thinking
Hmm.
about the meeting we just had, going into the meeting that we're in, and then thinking about what to do at the end of the day. And not being present in the moment, and that's a skill that can be developed in really being able to focus and be present with people. And I think it's powerful too. All of my best supervisors had really mastered that skill.
Hmm.
And then, boundary setting, and then sometimes just having like an occasional digital detox, right? Of just trying to set some time aside. So,
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of ground in one
yeah,
answer. So I'm going to go back and revisit some things because there's so much in there. But I
I
think
know.
the digital minimalism is such
Yeah,
an interesting topic to me. I think it can be applied in so many ways, right? Like logistically, you could just minimize the tools that you're using, but even it's making me think of even the way you organize your phone or your desktop,
yeah,
just getting rid of the clutter, like slimming down your options. We don't getting rid of that app you haven't touched in 6 months, that kind of thing.
exactly. Yeah,
But I do want to look at the chat for a moment here too, because
yeah.
we gotta there, it's resonating with folks, the digital fatigue.
It's
And
so rough. Yeah,
it's just exhausting. I do also want to mention something that Beth said here. I found that decision fatigue on top of all the changes in the federal sphere has been increasingly overwhelming. So I think that's something that's obviously going to resonate with a lot of folks here. It's like it's not just what we're dealing with in the workday, but all incessant
yeah,
news updates and changes. So
yeah,
it's different contexts of just not your work life, but your personal life, and then what's happening,
yeah.
globally and here too. So I just want to touch on that
Well,
because I'm sure people that's a big
absolutely. I
one.
think that decision fatigue dovetails a lot. I teach resilience at the State Department right now. And you know, we've been living in uncertain times for a while now. Even just the pandemic made life as we knew it really different, and I think we're still coming out of that in a lot of ways. And so I think that's I think the beauty of sort of focusing on what's important and being able to really being able to be present in the moment and have know what your priorities are. What's hard
Mhm.
is it feels like our priorities are always shifting. So I think sometimes I really like being grounded in the moment, and I think there's different techniques to be able to do that. But I think um, focusing on the now and not, I talk a lot about the difference of focusing on what you can control or perhaps influence, and
Mhm.
really identifying those things that are outside of your control. Because
Right.
once you do that, then you can let go of some of the, even they're really big things that are outside of our control these days.
Mhm.
But there's a piece, I think, that comes from focusing on those decisions that you actually have some power over. And then the swirl kind of happens above you, and there's a place of peace that you have around you.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I think there's a couple other things I do want to touch on here too. Um, So time blocking, can you just define what that
Yeah,
is quickly?
absolutely. It's setting time aside. A lot of times, it's really effective for things like deep work where you can't be interrupted every 5 minutes. You need to be able to focus for a longer period of time. And it's our team sometimes does that when we're needing to do prepare for something, a conference or one of our engagements, and being able to just set that time aside without interruptions, and we put it on our calendar. um, and one of the things that we also do is have days where we don't have meeting free days. So we
Mhm.
did that for quite a while, just on Fridays. It was very easy. There is the creep that always happens, where the only day available is that Friday, but trying to minimize that, right? But blocking your time and with a purpose. We think of using the calendar just for meetings, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was the only thing I was going to add, Jennifer. Thank you for the question. But just to clarify too, the way we do it is we treat a time block like a meeting. Like you honor the start and time and end time, and that you're doing a singular thing during that time block. But it's kind of like a meeting with yourself to get something done.
yeah,
But having it blocked on your calendar, I think, is so great to see it visually, and then it also indicates to people that you're working with that you're busy.
yeah.
You're
And make sure that you choose the busy option, not as free time that you've just, yeah, it,
exactly.
it sets a
Um,
boundary.
and then one other thing, and then I will get back to our questions. I saw a couple comments in here, folks talking
Yeah,
about, um, dealing with the issue of needing to respond to things, with changing priorities and things like that. I do want to just say, our next month, that's what we're going to be talking about specifically, how to handle fire drills and competing priorities. So I'm going to table some of those questions for just next month. I see them and we're taking them seriously, but that is a topic for next month here. So getting back to our questions for today, how can we balance personal focus while also supporting teams? Because again, this group is supervisors or folks that want to move into those types of roles. So we have dual responsibilities, right? We need to get
yeah.
our own work done, but then we're also here to support our teams and their productivity and well-being. So how do we manage those two things?
Absolutely. It's a really hard thing, I think, balancing your own productivity and being able to support your team at the same time, and you know putting off that deep work until 5 o'clock in the day when they're gone is not a great solution. So really signaling it, doing those time blocks and blocking your time is really effective. Um, but also signaling when you're available, I think. And doing the walk around is always a great thing too, just to check in on people. Um, but really set those expectations openly, communicate clearly when you have those focus blocks to your teammates in advance, and then also establish response timeframes. I mentioned that before. That you may not respond during those blocked times, respond to an email unless it's labeled urgent in the tag in the front, right? And really schedule your calendar intentionally with people, designating those hours that you're available for meetings and questions and collaborative problem solving and that kind of thing. Um, Also, I would highly recommend buffering some time, 15 or 30 minutes. And if it's only five, that isn't, you can do that too. But between those times when you're not available doing deep work and when you're transitioning into collaboration, really to be able to properly transition your mindset so that you can be present with people. I think it's an undervalued skill. People know when you're paying attention to them, and when we're not doing that, it kind of signals that they're not important enough for to have our attention, and we never want that, right? With our
Mhm.
team. But I think there could be some things like developing a decision framework so that when you're not available, they might be able to resolve certain problems, independently. um, really being able to build some of those repositories of common questions so people know what to do, and cross-train team members to cover for each other during those focus work time, where maybe there's someone that um, is a senior leader that can support you in that moment. Um, and I would also, uh, really be thinking about how you can use some of the asynchronous tools strategically. So when I say asynchronous, it means not doing things at the same time in the same moment. So it could be whether it's a Google Doc that you can collaborate on, have some structure created to it, but have team members be able to contribute to it at different points in the day, and then come together to discuss and refine it, or you spend that time on your own with that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, those are just some of the things that come to mind with that. And one of the other things that I think is important, as we have like vacation time coming up, is really to think through um, how do you, it's really important for us to have rest and to be disconnected while we're on leave.
Mhm.
So I really encourage people to use that as a time for your team's professional development. And, experiential learning is one of the number one ways that that adults learn. And
Mhm.
so setting your team up for success while you're away is really a valuable thing. And preparing them ahead of time, talking about sort of the nuances of your role, some potential challenges that might happen, and strategies that to overcome them, and then also schedule a debrief on the way upon your return, so that you're able to process what they learned in that experience, and frame it as sort of a learning opportunity, and being a coach mentor in that way. It's
Yeah.
also something that you can also divide responsibilities, right? Not have every one person doing everything. Maybe there's some meetings that you could assign to different staff.
Yeah.
And the other part too that I think is really important is we always hate all those emails we have to go through when we get back. Set time aside. Don't ease back into your role. Allow some time, whether it's a half day or a whole day, just to be able to get back into work mode without feeling like you're having to also do all the meetings and all that other stuff too.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, let's see. I think yeah, your point about letting other people sort of step into new roles or responsibilities while you're away it resonates with me personally. Somebody I worked with very early on in my career went on maternity leave, and she was like, "Well, I have to train you on how to do half my job while I'm gone." But that changed the trajectory of my career, and it was just so powerful to, step in when somebody else was away. So I do think that's a good way to open the door for other folks to, even short term, just try something new. So thank you for sharing that too. Um, just sort of a sub question here. Something
Yeah,
that comes up on almost all of our conversations as part of this group is the idea of modeling. We have to model the behavior we want our teams to reflect here. So I think it's true here, right, with time management. So I
yeah.
just was curious if you had any thoughts on that, kind of the power of modeling there. You spoke about rest, but on a day-to-day basis, what do you think? That it is productive for teams to see that happening, right?
Right. And I think there's different ways, whether it's even just how you start your meetings, of spending some time to connecting with people. You can do it in a formal sort of way with some questions or something, but you can also do it informally. Um, I also think it's super important to have an agenda and and too often meetings don't have that. Uh, and with like what are you wanting to accomplish in that meeting, like why are you even having it, and then who's responsible for the actions that came out of that meeting, so that it's so I think then people feel a sense of productivity, right? And there's a reason for your time. I don't know how many meetings I've been in at times where it's like,
Why am
well,
I
that
here?
was great. What are we doing? Doing what?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Meetings. That's a whole nother discussion for
yeah,
us too, running effective meetings. So we're racking up all these topics.
yeah,
I also want to say just thank you to everybody participating in the chat. It's quite active today, so we're trying to get as much as we can, but thank you. Keep going. This is really helpful to see these comments. Um,
yeah.
I'll move along because we knew this was going to happen. 30 minutes goes by so quickly. But just generally speaking, what are some mistakes we should try to avoid when it comes to time management, if we can position it that way?
Yeah, like I said, it's very personal, and I think what works for one person isn't going to work for the other. So one can be like, a rigidity that you can have, like creating a system that's too perfect to be practical, and real in the real world, like there needs to be some flexibility. And if it doesn't quite work out, rather than throwing it all out like, oh, that Pomodoro thing doesn't work, think about how you can tweak it for you, make it your own in a lot of ways. Um, you don't want to also spend more time creating this elaborate system than actually just doing your real work. So, I would say go with simple is really an important thing. Um, and, you know, I think there's also what I would call like calendar optimism. You know, we I my default setting is 45-minute meetings. And
Mm,
some of them don't have to be even that long. Maybe they're only really needed to be a half an hour, depending. That's why, like, if you do an agenda, you have a better sense of how much time do I actually need for this meeting. But you
right,
all know if you schedule it for an hour, you stay there for an hour a lot of times. And so trying not to do that, I think makes a big difference.
right,
Um, and then the other thing is really just all of this uh, really involves some reflection. So you need to step back and say, what's working right now, what's not, what are the things that I need to tweak to make this work. Um, so that's a big thing.
right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I know somebody asked for a copy of the chat. We'll try to include that too because I see all these comments. It's amazing. I love it. We'll try to get a transcript version of that for
I
everyone.
would love a copy of the chat because I'm not able to track
Yeah,
all that that's going on. So that's great.
I'll definitely check.
And then I think, Leah, the big thing is really that attention management. We are, I think, almost it's an addiction of really jumping between tasks and mistaking busyness for productivity. Our brains can only focus on one task at a time. And multitasking is actually not backed by neuroscience. It's not something our brain does. So, being able to create focus in our lives is really important. The other thing that I think we get a lot of in the government is this false urgency, treating like everything is a high priority. It gets adrenaline going through us. It's real. It that actually decreases our brain's ability to process higher level thinking during that time. Like chemically, we're not able to do it as much when we create emergencies all the in with everything. So really diluting it to what true priorities are, um, and being able to focus on those core things that are important and priorities. It's
Right.
like tyranny of the urgent sometimes what we have.
Agreed, agreed. Our last question
Mhm.
is here. It's arrived. What
Yeah.
tips can we use to encourage time management on our teams? Now, we did talk about this already a little bit with modeling, but it's always nice to be able to walk away with some practical advice. So anything top of mind before we wrap up about just, really how to help this stick with our teams. We've seen a lot of comments come through that this maybe it's just not working in practice, or it's not valued at your agency. So just some practical advice to maybe help some of this stick a little bit more.
Well, I think that a lot of it, when you can't, in some ways you can't control your agency or their culture, but really culture, people experience culture on the team. And if
Mhm.
you're the leader of that team, then you have some control over how you create the culture of that team. And so we've talked about modeling, and it's super important. But I think it's a matter of creating sort of loose structures that are become those norms. Some of those things that I've talked about already, with making sure you have an agenda and creating space, making sure that when you're together, you're actually present with one another, and then creating shared calendars so people know, what you're doing. My boss has his calendar shared, and there's something that I'm interested in or curious about. I have, he'll will actually, I can ask and say, hey, can I go to that too? I'm curious about that. So it's a way also for me to increase my knowledge and learn in that way. Um,
Yeah.
so I know we have yeah, we're running out of time, which I expected. There's so much good stuff to
I
talk
know there really is. There really is. I will just add to that too. I think just by talking about it, so if the topic of conversation resonated with you today as an attendee, talk to people on your team about it. I think the more we bring it up of, I'm really trying to focus, multitasking is killing me. I think it kind of normalizes, the shift towards better time management too. So I encourage you all to do that as much as you can. Mindy, it looks like you just shared your contact information in
about.
the
I
chat.
did, yeah.
Thank you for doing that. Yes, everybody go connect with Mindy on LinkedIn.
Would love that.
But thank you, Mindy, for being here today. I knew this was a dense topic, but you've really covered a lot of ground in only 30 minutes. So I thank you for that. Thank you for your expertise. I will just remind everyone we have another virtual networking discussion coming up in June, how to handle fire drills. I think this is relevant for everyone here. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Thanks for joining us. And Mindy, once again, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Leah.
Sure thing. Bye-bye, everybody.